D2D panel. Mobile is a very special vertical. Lots of issues to solve, right? You have really small screen size, you have latency. How do you get all these users to communicate inside of an app? And we'll even talk about how to customize things like advertisements. So I'm up here with John, Jack, and Justin, and we're going to talk to them about how to solve some of these problems, D2D style. So first off, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll ask each of you to introduce yourselves. I'm Beth with Vserv.Mobi. On a daily basis, I talk to app developers about expanding globally. So my company is very large in India, Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America. So I'm having pretty high-level discussions as to how to expand into those areas on mobile. Justin, should you go ahead and start?
Hello, I'm Justin Forth, head of Global BD at PubNative. We actually just launched last week. Pretty excited about that. I've previously worked at Applift. I don't know if any of you are into game publishing. Applift is a large mobile games marketing platform, and that's who spun off PubNative. And before that, I was at GetJar, which is it's an Android ad network. So a lot of my background comes from mobile user acquisition and monetization in various forms. So that's where most of my expertise is.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a co-founder of PacketZoom. We provide mobile speed as a service to app developers, basically increasing content download speeds from 2 to 10x with a simple SDK integration. Previously, I was at a bunch of mobile companies. I've been doing mobile for about 13 years, so I've seen a lot of the crap that's happened before, and I'm seeing it happen again.
My name is Jack Chawla. I'm with a company called Moxtra, and I'm VP of products there. Before Moxtra, I was with SAP and WebEx. And the Moxtra team is basically ex-WebEx team, and we are doing kind of WebEx 2.0. It's a communication and collaboration play. It's a combination of end-user application, but more importantly, is the SDK play for the developers, where you can bring communication and collaboration right into your application.
Okay, great, thanks. I think before the panel, we had decided that Justin, you're better because you're customizing the experience of advertisements. You're faster because you're speed as a service, so people can download things faster with your SDK. And you're feature rich because now you're adding features that developers may not have time to develop on their own.
Right.
So maybe we can go through those descriptions and talk a little bit more about what you're doing, drill down a little bit deeper.
Cool. Let's go down the line.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the kind of topic of this panel: is better, faster, and feature rich. So I didn't really talk about PubNative much in the beginning, but what PubNative does is provide native advertising for mobile apps. And the reason we like to say that it's better is because we're not restricting developers to a certain framework. A lot of the ad networks out there right now that developers and publishers are using to monetize their apps are quite restrictive in the format of the ad, in how you can control your own app inventory as a developer and publisher. So what we do is we open it up. We say, there's no limit on the formats that are going to go into your advertisements. They can be literally designed around the user experience. So we think when people are developing apps, they put a lot of effort into the end user, into what's going on the other end. And we want the ad experience to reflect that. The other way we do that is by doing it through an API. And I think you'll see a lot of solutions for advertising and for mobile development in general are going to require an SDK. I believe both of these solutions, although not advertising related, are going to require an SDK. We're able to do our whole service server side via an API.
Cool. Okay, so PacketZoom. What we do, as I said, is mobile speed as a service. Well, what does that mean? I think anyone who's had an iPhone or an Android device who's loaded any sort of content from the cloud has seen some sort of spinning wheel that makes you turn off the app and do something else. Our technology makes that go away, and it's a pure software solution. So what we've done is rebuilt the entire TCP stack, replacing the protocol. And our protocol, which is designed specifically for the native mobile use case, basically can fetch the content faster than HTTP can and return it to the user, which we believe, our thesis is that a faster user experience will increase every part of the funnel, leading to better click-throughs for ads, better retention rates, which lead to better monetization across any kind of ad, as long as you're pulling content from the cloud. If your app doesn't have any cloud-based content, then you don't need us. So, and we've actually taken special care to make sure that the integration is incredibly easy. SDK integrations are something that can be very difficult for app developers, and I think the solution of APIs is a great one. Our SDK is, believe it or not, you can integrate without a keyboard, and we can show you that later if you're interested. But it makes it really easy for a developer to try it out, see if it works, and not have to spend hours figuring out if that solution is for them.
Great. So I'm pretty sure everybody has used messaging and meetings in their personal life and also professional life. And our goal with kind of what we're doing, what I call as WebEx 2.0, is to bring this into your application. So we have an SDK play, and our estimate is that if you were to build it on your own, you'll be probably spending years, and you need to have highly specialized engineers to actually build this. And it will cost you a lot of money to actually build this. So we make it very easy for you guys to take our SDK, write 10 lines of code and get started. Obviously, if you want to do customization, you spend more time. And our pricing model is also no risk. You get started for free, so we have free tier. So you can include free tier. The free tier will be free for life. And then we have paid tier where we do shared revenue. So we really want to partner with the developers to go to the market. We have done the Act 1 where we sold to enterprises and small businesses. Our Act 2 is really to enable the developers to integrate and take it to the market.
Okay, thanks. So now we know who you are and what you do. I'm pretty vendor agnostic because I deal with developers all the time. And one thing that comes up a lot is I don't want to use another SDK. It's like the rise of the SDK, right? Everybody has an SDK they want you to put on your app. So, especially for you two at the end there, John and Jack, why would when you think about the SDK and making a developer's life easier, everyone's trying to do that. So what's important in a D2D environment, not necessarily about your product, about choosing which SDK I would put in my mobile app?
So I think a problem, you're definitely right. The rise of the SDKs has happened over the last couple of years. Everybody seems to have an SDK. Everyone says, 2 lines of code, 3 lines of code, easy to integrate. The reality is there's unforeseen problems sometimes where there's conflicts between SDKs. You don't know what's going to happen until you actually get them all integrated, get your app in the wild, and see what happens. For a developer trying to serve app developers as its market, I think it's very important to be as transparent as possible and show people that they have the ability to turn off your SDK if there's any problem, to make it as your SDK should do no harm. If everything goes wrong, you don't get your funding, your servers crash, everything breaks, your customers shouldn't suffer for that. So generating trust with your customers is incredibly important. How do you do that? You have to be really good, make sure your SDK works really well. Lean works as a development methodology for a lot of things. SDK development, I would question if it's the right model, because by the time your SDK is in the wild, it's hard to get back. People are using it, and it could stay there for a very long time. So you need to make sure that it's built and it's bulletproof. Some other things, make sure that it doesn't interfere with other SDKs as best you can. That takes just a lot of, testing throughout the development cycle. We've done something which we call fail forward. So our SDK doesn't actually activate until we know that our servers are up and running and healthy. So in the worst case scenario of a catastrophic event, our SDK doesn't do anything, and your app behaves exactly as it would without us. So doing things to proactively make sure that your customers' apps are unaffected by your mistakes is, I think, incredibly important.
Well, we are just starting out with SDK. So we are on version 1, and when we talk to the developers, we are not seeing any kind of resistance with SDK. We do have an API play as well, and it mostly works on the web. If you're doing integration on the mobile, people want SDKs so to have a highly integrated experience. If you were to use APIs, chances are you'll have to go and either you're making a server call and getting data, or if you have the UX, you probably need to go and open it somewhere else. So frankly, I don't know whether I agree with the premise of the question. We haven't seen much resistance with SDK at all.
Can I say one more thing? Sure. I've seen developers who have 10 or 15 different SDKs from ad networks integrated into their app, and they build their own Lua scripts to actually turn on or off SDKs depending on the SDK performance at any given time. So developers are smart. They figure out which SDKs they want to use, and they'll find ways to use the right ones. But I really do believe that conflict between SDKs and resistance to putting in untested things is actually a real problem.
Yeah, I was going to comment on the fact that, the past 2 companies that I was at, we had an SDK as an ad network for monetization, and I can't tell you, how many times I had a door closed in my face because I mentioned, hey, we've got an SDK you can serve ads through. So generally, on the publishing and development side, I have seen serious resistance to SDKs, which is why I think, at least in the advertising side, like you said, you'll see, in some cases, see 15 or 20 different ad network SDKs in, and there can be a lot of fragmentation there, and it can cause the apps to crash. So it can be an issue in that sense.
Well, so maybe we are new, but what we are trying to do with our SDK, I don't think can be done through API. So we are giving ability for people to chat and voice and actually share the screen. So your mobile application screen can be shared with the people who join the meeting. Mm-hmm. And I can't see a way to do it through API.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. It needs to be tested, and the brand behind the SDK needs to be trusted. And that's what we are at the journey of building a brand which you can trust. And as I mentioned, the engineers we have are battle tested. They've done WebEx before. They've been working on this kind of core communication and collaboration problem for 10 to 12 years. So we feel comfortable that what we're building is very industrial strength and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, and there clearly is a case for SDKs. Don't get me wrong. We have an SDK. We think our SDK is great. So there is a case for SDKs for complex things. I think the ad SDKs are one area which have had some problems in the past. There are some that are great. I know that there are some great SDKs that are out there. Mm-hmm. I know that there are others that have had problems. But the reality is having an SDK is not a one-stop solution for everybody. So if you're building tools for developers, make sure that if you need an SDK, give them SDK. If you can find another way to do it, find the way that's best for your developers.
Yeah, I would agree that, like I was mentioning before, it's very ad network specific that there are so many ad network SDKs. I think in a case like, attribution analytics, right? You're going to need an SDK for that. So it's definitely not step away from the SDK. It's how do you choose the right one, and how do you know you need it? And I think that's where both of your systems come into place is, at what point is it better for the developer to rely on a third party to help them with something rather than build it out themselves. Right. So I think an ad network is a clear difference, right? So you guys probably have some more to talk about that. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, so I'm going to not talk about that.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Same thing here. So we made a point that the ROI on using our SDK, basically we're doing extremely horizontal stuff, right? So the value add to the domain problem you are solving is not going to come from having chat or voice or ability to share screen. It will come from your domain expertise, and we want to make it easy for you to bring communication collaboration. And I can't think of any other way to give you that capabilities other than the SDKs, especially on the mobile.
Yeah, I think sometimes too when we are talking developer to developer, it becomes developer to vendor, right? And you have these developers getting overwhelmed with tools and SDKs and APIs, and everyone's trying to kind of sell into them. So beyond the SDK or API or however you sell into your developer audience, what other value D2D on a mobile level can you as thought leaders offer? And would love to hear from the audience if you have specific questions on a mobile level with the D2D environment.
I can take that.
Hope I didn't stump you.
So again, we are starting. So what we find developers reacting very positive to is basically the pricing model we have is zero commitment. We give them a free tier so they can go and try it out. And only when they find their users actually clicking and meeting, and they say, okay, 15-minute meeting is not big enough for me. I need to have a longer meeting. Then they come to us saying, okay, we want a premium offering, and then we have a revenue share plan around it. The other thing we are finding a lot of interesting traction from the users is a lot of mobile apps are one-time fee. And this kind of allows them to kind of create a recurring revenue around their user base. So that's our story so far. We'll see how it goes as we go along.
Nothing in particular on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to pass on that.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone in the audience want to jump in on the SDK discussion? Do we have a lot of mobile people here? Kind of quiet out there.
Do we have any mobile people here?
Yeah. Do we have any mobile people other than us? All right.
So I'm not a mobile person, but actually, since most people aren't mobile people, but they might have an API, when should having a mobile SDK or having mobile development resources available be part of their strategy? Right.
I'll love to answer that.
Well, let me take a shot first. So I think don't think of mobile as a add-on or a side effect. It's actually a very different kind of beast. The developers are different. How you implement is different. How you go to market is different. Everything's different. It doesn't seem like it should be. It seems like it should be pretty easy, especially with Apple saying how easy it is. But if you look at even the development environment, so if you want to build an iOS app, that's great. You can go build an app. You can build it and deploy it. And that seems really reasonable for you. As soon as you have a team, there's no real good CI, continuous integration system that's out there for Apple, for iOS apps. So you have to really think about how you're going to use your existing team or build out a new team to work in these environments. So don't think of it as a second thought. So if you have a set of APIs, they may not be exactly what you need for the mobile use case. And again, remember, when you're going to be deploying that app and it's in the wild, it's there for a while. It's not like the web where you can just turn it off and it goes away. It stays around like a pretty bad hangover for a while.
Okay, so the common design patterns we are seeing when talking to the web developers, so if you talk to people at Ariba or SAP or any other software vendor, when they think about mobilizing, generally the use cases, there's content from their application. It can be a report or it can be a screen which is showing the workflow. And they want ability for the people who are using to be able to communicate and collaborate around a certain content piece. So generally there's an event which requires action and you want to bring people together to solve that particular problem. So our value proposition to the web developer is that you can do API integration with our application. We can provide you the white label application. Let's say you're looking at a report and you want to bring people around the report to solve a particular issue. You click a button, you take the report, ingest it into what we call as a binder. You might think about it as a collaboration room, and then you can go and invite people in there. They can see the same report, they can chat, and they can have a meeting around it, and they can solve the problem. So in a way, it provides an easy way for the web developer to mobilize a certain use case around the content collaboration.
Yeah, I have to agree that it is a different beast than other categories, and that from what I've seen as far as successful apps are those companies that have taken a mobile-first approach and really built from the ground up a separate mobile team. Also, again, using the advertising lens, I've noticed a lot of the large web presences and web brands kind of think of mobile as an afterthought, as, hey, we need to be on mobile, so our mobile website's good enough. But in reality, 90-something% of time on phones, on smartphones, is spent in app. So I think it's really important to consider kind of all the different tools out there for a mobile developer, figure out, okay, who is my end user and how are all of these tools going to affect my bottom line? Do I need another SDK? Do I need this analytics? And it's in a completely different framework than a web development tool.
Right, and underneath it all, these SDKs are solving things that the developer on their own can never solve. I mean, John, with your latency, if I didn't use your SDK, how would I download a huge file on my mobile phone? And so that's kind of underneath the vendor, D2D in the ecosystem. You're solving a pretty big problem with this SDK that is very mobile specific. So, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So the reality is, what we're doing is taking a much lower level approach, I guess. So solving a problem that if you had enough money and enough people, you could probably solve this problem by yourselves, but you probably wouldn't because it's a lot of money and a lot of people.
How much money? How many people?
I mean, a good
Can you
performance,
quantify?
I would say one single good server performance guy would be, I don't know, 200,000-300,000, and they're going to need a friend.
Okay.
So it's not a cheap problem to solve, and it's not a static problem either. So these people are large companies have tens of these people or 20s of these people. For a smaller app company, what would you rather spend your money on? Making your app UX or product serve your customers better, or spending twice that to get someone to make it faster? Now, we believe that the speed is important and it can be done as a service to everyone. So we'll take on the onus and do that research and solve that, crack that hard nut so that everyone else can implement it in a very easy way. And I think we're going to see the emergence of the next generation of lower level, harder problems being solved in mobile, which frankly, it took a long time for these problems to be solved in web, and like over a decade probably for things like Omniture and analytics or different web-based tools and companies to come up. And they evolved in a time when the investment to build that company was great enough that a customer could be pretty sure that company is going to be there next year. Today, it's very easy to have a low investment to start up a company. And so customers don't know that company is going to be around tomorrow. You don't need to have bills out more than a month or two. And if you're providing something that's really important, it's to the customer, you have to build that trust in some other way. I think I just babbled and veered off a little bit.
No, I think mobile video is a huge problem right now. I mean,
Yeah.
people cannot download a video outside of the United States. It's extremely hard with the connectivity. So
Yeah, and these
to
are
solve that would be big for certain developers who need to deliver large files like video.
Yeah, and to solve it, if that's your core business, you should solve that. If it's not your core business, but you want to serve, video ads once in a while, you're probably not going to solve that problem. So you depend on someone else, whether it's the technology provider or someone like us or us, to solve that for you. And in fact, with our tech, the worse the network gets, the better the speed multiple is.
And then Justin, I saw you launch last week at Mobile Beat.
Yes.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What you're proposing, just to boil it down for everyone in the audience, is actually very spectacular because I'm an ad network and advertisements are basically served on the client side through an SDK, which traps how you're designing your ads. And that's kind of a big deal because we all know advertisements suck, right? So basically his company has solved that by allowing customization through an API, which is the first time ever that a company has done this, right?
Yeah.
I don't know of any.
I mean, so the idea of native advertising has been around on web for a while. You see the in-feed, the in-stream kind of stuff. On mobile, it's been a hot buzzword for the past 6 to 12 months. But yeah, again, all of the solutions are currently an SDK that have standardized formats. So yeah, we've kind of opened up that completely to allow the developer to have full control over what it looks like, to really build it into the user experience, which I think is what every developer has in mind when they're developing something is, how is this going to look when it's done? So we try to work with them to make that work the best.
Yeah, and that's evolving a lot right now because you have messaging apps, you have unique needs for content to have customized ads. So in this D2D tool, we may be changing mobile advertising completely. In this D2D tool, we may be speeding up your downloads and that latency, that scrolling circle you see when you're looking at a video, and then you're allowing people to communicate quite a bit across how many users can communicate in an app with your
It scales to millions.
millions. So right, I saw the demo. I would encourage you guys to take a look at it, where basically in your mobile app I saw 20 people talking inside of the app, so quite a bit being solved in like I said, a special vertical, which there's a lot of pain points in mobile. So thanks so much for your knowledge and for discussing this topic.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions before I conclude? I'm getting the time, so. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.